Hello and welcome to the Gagglers Challenge. This is Szamuely, and yes, it's back to Budapest, cold, wet, and anything but spring-like weather. But it's time for my weekly Tuesday night live stream. So welcome everybody who has joined me. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the good wishes that you have extended for my travails in London. And I wanted to start off nice live stream. Somebody says audio is backwards. And is the audio better now? Audio better. Anyone let me know if the audio is improved. So any improvement? No improvement. No, still bad. Is there any improvement now? Terrible. Nope, still bad. Okay, how about now? Is that audio better? No better? Still no improvement? No, anyone else? No improvement at all? Weak and static sound. Weak and static sound. No changes. There is somebody says there's a bit of improvement. All right, let me see if I can maybe refresh the page. Sound is terrible. Let's see if I can. Okay, page has been refreshed. Somebody's already suggesting reboot. Reboot is a more extreme solution. I mean, that's obviously one that I will resort to next. But I'm hoping not to reboot. It's not no improvement. Still no improvement. All right. Now, oh no, somebody now says Dale says now it's okay. Now perfect. Okay. Okay. So I don't even have to reboot. I just refresh the page, and that seemed to do the job. Sound great. Well, this is fantastic. Really very excited. Anyway, I want to start off with going back to the. Thank you. So going back to the events at Heathrow last Tuesday. So it was about a week ago now. So as I explained, when I got off, thank you, so the great reset. Thank you so much. Marty says the great reset. Yes, I love the reset. What like Hillary Clinton and Russia. But someone says, please get a bit closer to the microphone. All right, I get closer to the microphone. All right, I'll get a bit closer to the microphone. Anyway, so as I said last week, when I arrived at Heathrow, then I was, immediately greeted by a collection of agents. It was almost immediate as soon as I got off the aircraft, and they looked at my passport and then led me away told me that they just needed to ask me some questions, and all the time I'm surrounded by various people, and then when they led me to the interrogation room, which was quite a way away, so it was quite a lengthy walk to the interrogation room. They explained to me that this was under some kind of anti-terrorism legislation, and and then of course by statute they have to present me with the some documentation to explain what the hell this legislation is. So I thought I would share with you today the material that they presented me, and then they went through it, which was so tedious. Somebody says how many? There was altogether about 7 people who greeted me, and then I was interrogated. Two who were interrogating me, but then there was a supervisor. He came in and joined in the interrogation, and of course there were also others who were going through my luggage, who were going through my wallet, and then who were then doing the fingerprinting and the photographing and all the rest. So altogether, it was a number of people. So here's the document that they presented me, just to explain what this legislation was. I want to show you this. I had it scanned specially for tonight, and here it is. This is the Schedule 3, Counter-Terrorism and Border Security Act of 2019. And then here you can see it says here, police officers at ports play a key role in countering the threat from hostile activity and have powers under Schedule 3 to the Counterterrorism and Border Security Act of 2019 to stop, question, search, and, if necessary, detain people entering or leaving the UK. This also applies to those traveling within the UK on board a ship or aircraft. So right away, the moment you read that introductory paragraph, you start getting a little concerned, because you're thinking, well, what the hell is hostile activity? If they said anyone who's suspected of engaging in terrorism, okay, well then that's you can say, well, that's pretty good. I mean, I never engaged in terrorism. I never encouraged anyone to engage in terrorism. I didn't collude in anyone's terrorism, so I'm good to go. But once they say that there's some hostile activity, well, I don't know. I mean, I was like, I'm pretty hostile. I mean, I can think of a lot of people I'm very hostile to. A lot of, I mean, we've expressed a lot of hostility during our live stream. So if that's all they need to show to detain me, imprison me, prosecute me, I don't know. If that's all they need, then I've engaged in hostile activity. Then I don't think I've got much of a defense. Anyway, so this this was well that somebody asked me what was in that sandwich they offered you. I never saw the I never saw the sandwich, and because I said no, I think I'll pass on the sandwich. Anyway, so here then it says that hostile actors need to travel in order to plan, prepare, and carry out their hostile acts. Okay, so I'm a hostile actor. I need to travel in order to plan, prepare, and carry out their hostile acts. Well, I don't know. I mean, I can be pretty hostile staying at home. but so I don't need to travel. Anyway, Schedule 3 legislation is used by accredited officers to determine whether a person appears to be or to have been concerned in hostile activity. So the point was, therefore, you see now the reason for the interrogation is for accredited officers to determine whether I have engaged in hostile activity. When a person is formally questioned for this purpose, this is commonly known as an examination. Our overriding priority is to keep the public safe by working together with all our communities to defeat hostile activity. Now, so when you read this, okay, so essentially they're going to conduct an examination, but what's really going to happen here is this is an examination which I can't not cooperate. I mean, I have to cooperate with this examination. I don't have the right not to cooperate. I don't have the right to remain silent. And this becomes clear as this document continues. And that says there is a code of practice that governs how Schedule 3 powers are used. If you wish to see a copy, you can ask the examining officer. This leaflet is provided to all people examined under Schedule 3 and seeks to answer some questions you may have about the use of the power. So here are the questions. Who has stopped me and why? Okay, police officers have stopped you. Oh, that's nice. They work at the port to help protect our border and keep the UK safe. These officers do not have to give you their names, which they didn't. They will give you their force identification number if you request it. We work closely at the border with colleagues from government enforcement agencies such as the UK Border Agency, who have powers to stop, question, and search individuals for their own purposes. What is Schedule 3? Our powers to stop and question you come from Schedule 3 of this Counterterrorism and Border Security Act of 2019. The use of this legislation is regularly and independently reviewed. The legislation is unique and applies only at a port or border area. Okay. The purpose is to determine whether a person appears to be or to have been engaged in hostile state activity. Unlike most other police powers, the power to stop, question, and search, and if necessary, detain persons under Schedule 3 does not require prior authority or any suspicion. So, forget the, any cause or anything like that. Some people may find being stopped by the police inconvenient, you think, and embarrassing, but we have a duty to protect our communities from hostile activity. So all the time it's this hostile activity. They keep repeating this, and the more they repeat it, the more it acquires a certain reality, as if we know what exactly hostile activity is. I mean, we know what terrorism is, but we really don't know what hostile activity is. And your patience and understanding helps us to do this. And they say, why have you asked for my passport? This is for the purpose of your examination. Other documentation can positively identify you, may also be acceptable. You must also give the officer any other documents or information they request, which of course I did, such as my wallet. Can you search me or my luggage or ask me for passports to electronic devices? To ask the question is to answer yes. You can be searched, and anything you have with you or belonging to you that has been, or is about to be on an aircraft, ship, or international train, including any vehicle you might be traveling in. So that's it. And then this includes electronic devices, mobile phones, laptops, etc. And you may be required to provide the login information. So when they ask you for your computer and your phone, they're going to ask you for the login information, including passwords. Where searches are conducted, there is no requirement for a written notice of search to be provided to you. Under certain circumstances, the officer can seize any property they find. Now, if you recall, during my conversation with, I think Marty has just posted what happened to Schedule 3 and about this terrorism act, and he posted a picture of Keir Starmer with Jolani, the leader of ISIS, who took over Syria and is now, transformed from a head chopper to a person in good standing. But apparently, the terrorism legislation doesn't apply to him. Now, the thing about this, now, as I said in my podcast with Peter, I didn't bring my laptop with me, and I didn't bring my phone with me. Not because I had anything to hide, not because I've done anything illegal, unlawful, or anything at all. However, I was anticipating some kind of a difficulty at the airport. And I read what had happened to John Laughlin, to George Galloway, to Kit Clarenberg, Craig Murray, and therefore, I was prudent enough not to bring in anything that they can seize and demand from me passwords to get in. So not only then they demanded the passwords, but they also want to know whether there's anything encrypted on there. So if there's anything encrypted, then they're going to want to disencrypt any material you have that's in there. So and that's really the whole purpose of all of these kinds of interrogation, because once they can get their hands on your laptop, then their investigation can just go in any direction they want. They can just have a field day, going through your phone, going through everything that you've been depositing in your on your laptop. And as I said, not only did they go through my wallet, but they also wanted to know where I had bank accounts, and like which banks and so on. I mean, and of course, other questions like how did I make a living? What kind of work did I do? Whom will I see in London? And for what purpose? I had to give names of people that I intended to see, and of course, they asked about my my trip to Belgrade. Whom did I see in Belgrade? What was the purpose of my visit to Belgrade, and so on. So here then is this the document that goes on. Then how long can you keep my property? That's another question, apparently. For the purpose of an examination, an officer may retain anything given, searched, or found during a search for up to 7 days. Normally, your property will be returned to you straight away or at the conclusion of your examination. Property can be kept for longer than 7 days, where it may be required for use as part of a criminal investigation or under the Immigration Act of 1971. Now, as I say, I brought a burner phone. There was nothing on there, but they kept it until the last day of my visit. So essentially, they kept it for 4 days. But it was returned to me, and doubtless there was some spyware installed on the phone, but the phone has I've got rid of the phone, so there's no one is spying on me any longer. Anyway, officers may also retain anything for longer than 7 days where they believe it could be used in connection with the carrying out of a hostile act, or if they believe it is necessary to do so for the purpose of preventing death or significant injury. The Investigatory Powers Commissioner, after considering representations made by the affected parties, will decide whether to authorize the retention or use of an article or direct its return or destruction. If any of your property has been retained under these circumstances, you will be provided with a notice of retention, which they did provide me, explaining how to make representations to the Commissioner and what to do if you wish to seek an appeal to the Commissioner, where the decision has been delegated. So here's the interesting where it says, why wasn't I cautioned? And then it says, the examining officer does not need to administer a caution for the purposes of an examination under Schedule 3. So you basically, you have no right to refuse to answer their questions or to refuse to hand over anything they ask for. Now, the theory is, though they don't exactly spell it out, is that since anything you say will not be used in evidence against you, therefore you're not putting yourself in any legal jeopardy by talking to them, and therefore you're not being asked to give evidence against yourself, and therefore there's no need to provide a caution. However, you'd be a right chump to believe that they're not going to use anything you say against you at some point. How long can you keep me? Most examinations take only a short time. However, you may be formally detained within 1 hour and be required to remain for up to 6 hours overall. And so, my detention was roughly 3 hours. The decision to detain you will be subject to review by a senior officer 1 hour after you have been detained and every 2 hours thereafter. During examination, any personal welfare needs will be taken into consideration. If your ongoing travel arrangements are inconvenienced, where appropriate, officers will try to assist you with seeking an alternative arrangement. And then we have the wonderful question, what if I don't want to stay here or comply with any of the requests that you make of me? Well, a police officer has the power to detain you using reasonable force if necessary. You commit an offense if you willfully fail to comply with a request made by an officer under this legislation. This could result in a prison sentence or fine or both. So this is what the point. If you don't want to cooperate, you're committing an offense. And therefore, you could indeed be prosecuted, and it could result in a prison sentence or fine or both. What are my rights? If you have not been formally detained, you can request independent legal advice at your own expense and have someone informed of your examination at the discretion of the examining officer. If you are detained, your rights will be fully explained to you, and you have the right to independent legal advice at public expense. You may consult with a solicitor in private, in person, or by telephone. You also have the right to have someone informed of your detention. Your examination may be delayed pending consultation with a solicitor, unless doing so will prejudice the purpose of the examination. Now, I did say that I didn't want to talk to a solicitor, and then this was brought up by the supervising officer, who then took over and asked, well, why don't you want to avail yourself of a solicitor? And so I said, well, why would I? I don't think I'm in any legal jeopardy, so I don't need legal representation. It's just, I hope, what an innocent man would say. Anyway, so here then is, it just continues along this in this vein. Can you take my fingerprints, DNA, and photograph? If you are detained, officers can take any steps reasonably necessary to identify, measure, and photographing you. Schedule 3 provides for the taking of fingerprints and DNA in certain circumstances, which is what happened with me. As I said, they took my fingerprints, palm prints, all the rest. They took my DNA, and then they took 9 photographs. I had to do a 360-degree turn. However, if you refuse to provide your fingerprints and DNA, this can only be provided with the approval of a superintendent. What if I require medical treatment, blah, blah, and officers will seek medical advice where appropriate? Will my answers to questions be used against me in evidence? And here they say answers or information given orally in response to a question asked during the examination may not be used as evidence in criminal proceedings. But you always know when they say these things that there are going to be ways of getting around that. And so here it says, however, this may not be the case where the person is prosecuted for willfully failing to comply with a duty imposed under Schedule 3, or obstructing or seeking to frustrate a search or examination. The person is prosecuted for perjury or an offense where in giving evidence they make a statement that is inconsistent with that oral answer or information given in examination. So notice what they've done here. They've essentially basically gone right around their claim that what you say may not be used in evidence against you, and then they say, well, yeah, it can be used against you if you are prosecuted for perjury, and then they can then introduce something that you had said during this interrogation. Will a record be kept of my details? The police are obliged to keep a record of all examinations and detentions. This is for statistical and reference purposes only, and does not constitute any kind of a criminal record. No, but it's in the data bank. Where can I complain about my treatment? You can make a complaint if you think you have experienced inappropriate behavior, witnessed in person an incident where a police officer or a member of the staff acted inappropriately, and then they give you where you can complain. And then here's this sort of wonderful tackling hostile activity together. We got to, all of us, we got to band together, cooperate, tackling hostile activity. We value your support and cooperation. Everyone has a role to play in combating hostile state actors, not just the police. The threat of hostile activity is real and serious. Recent events have shown that a minority of people seek to commit offenses. Well, I don't understand that. I mean, it's usually a minority of people who seek to commit offenses. Insert force here, I don't know, has a key role in countering the threat and in maintaining national security. Blah, blah. Anyway, so that was one thing, and then subsequently, where are you? Here we are. They gave me some documents that I had to sign. And you can say your rights. Do you want someone informed? Do you want to consult a solicitor? So this is all. Just so that you sign that they've read all of that out to you, and so you sign here, and then notice of detention under Schedule 3. Yes, there we are. Notice that they've written my name in the Hungarian form because I came in on a Hungarian passport. And then here, your duties: answer questions put to you by examining officers, give the examining officer any information in your possession, give the examining officer on request either a valid passport or declare whether you have with you documents of a kind specified by the examining officer, give the examining officer on request any document which you have with you as cooperate with any search of your person or property, and so on. And then here's just basically, this is let me just turn it up around. So this would be, and then here basically they just took the phone. This is just notice that they took the phone. All right, so that was the ordeal, And the point is it's clear here that you really don't have too many rights there, and they haven't really explained to you why they chose you. Why did they select you? So when I asked, well, why me? Why did you select me? Well, they said purely routine, and then and then they said, well, it's just hostile activity. So in the end, you really don't know. And what is it that they suspect me of? They just say, well, we have a right to everything that we're doing under this piece of legislation. Well, that's fine. You may have a right under this piece of legislation. However, what is it that you want from me, and why have you selected me? That you never get an answer to any such question. Somebody says, "And not even a cavity search." No, I didn't get that. Though they gave a very uh, a very meticulous search, which kind of went on, starting from shoes, socks, going out, all the way up, and so on, and so on. Anyway, so that's what this the great freedom loving United Kingdom. The very the so while I was in the United Kingdom, I would be reading articles about what's going on in Hungary, and we're always talking about Hungary. It's a police state. Orban's repression and so on. I don't know. I wander around Hungary. No one bothers me here. I come into the country, I leave the country. No one interrogates me. So, but we're kind of so used to this model, this Cold War model, that somehow this is the free world. This is where freedom reigns, and somewhere over in the east, that's where there's the police state. Nothing could be further from the truth. However, I should say that today, the UK Home Office issued a issued a new guidelines, and said they're going to turn over a new leaf. All right, let's take a look at what this new guidelines that the UK Home Office claims. Here we have UK Home Office. Police time will no longer be wasted investigating legal social media posts, freeing up officers to patrol the streets and tackle real crime. So let's go back to the first one. So this was the original. So over recent years, guidance has failed to keep pace with the digital age and has led officers to being called out to people's homes over insults and routine arguments. Who'd have thunk? New measures announced today will introduce a new system that will prevent people from recording lawful free speech. Now, that of course is very interesting. Why exactly have the police been recording lawful free speech? Who gave them instructions to record lawful free speech? The forces will continue to ensure that reports from the public, which may lead to genuine harm, get the right response. All right. So the moment you say this, so we have first of all the new measures will introduce a new system that will prevent police from recording lawful free speech. Kind of, I don't know what they mean recording. How are you recording? What was it? You were eavesdropping on people, wiring their phones. You were eavesdropping on people's phone conversation. You were listening in through keyholes. New system that will prevent police from recording lawful free speech. And then forces will continue to ensure that reports from the public which may lead to genuine harm get the right response. Well, I find this sentence very confusing because what exactly may lead to genuine harm? Is it the reports themselves? In other words, is it the snitching out of your neighbors? You're snitching out of your family members. Is that what's leading to genuine harm? And then they get the right response? Or is it the actual content of the conversations? Forces will continue to ensure that reports from the public, which may lead to genuine harm, get the right response. So I don't know what is it that they mean by get the right response. I mean, in other words, if it's the former, that the reports from the public, which may lead to genuine harm, in other words, snitching, obviously do lead to genuine harm. They get the right response, so the snitches will get punished, which may be one way of reading this. Or do they mean that the right response will be administered to the people who have been snitched out? And then it says, over recent years, guidance has failed to keep pace with the digital age and has led to officers being called out to people's homes over insults and routine arguments. Well, none of that makes any sense. I mean, the insults and routine arguments have been with us, since forever. Why exactly have police been engaged in going to people's homes and getting involved in routine arguments and over insults? And then it says, police time will no longer be wasted investigating legal social media posts, freeing up officers to patrol the streets and tackle real crime. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Why do I not believe that? Because this is the kind of thing that is easy to do. It is easy to go to peaceful people in their homes, terrorize them, bully them, arrest them, haul them into the nick, bring some ridiculous criminal charges against them. That's very easy because the people who are victimized in this way have no idea about how to deal with the police. They imagine that they're law-abiding citizens, so they don't know what to do with the police. They're easy pickings. It's a lot easier doing that than patrolling the streets and tackling real crime. Hey, that stuff's dangerous. You could get hurt doing that. Who the hell wants to do that? It's hard dealing with real criminals, but it's easy to bully ordinary people arguing over who's going to do the washing up. By scrapping non-crime hate incidents, we are balancing the protection of vulnerable communities while respecting free speech. Yeah. Now, this is all very interesting because, of course, he says while respecting. So now they're admitting that they haven't been respecting free speech. By scrapping non-crime hate incidents, we are balancing the protection of vulnerable communities while respecting free speech. In other words, all this time, you have not been respecting free speech. In other words, it's exactly what everyone has accused the police of doing for a long time, that you haven't been respecting free speech. And remember, Keir Starmer, when he was asked, I think when he had his meeting with Trump, and he was asked about free speech in the United Kingdom, is we have a long tradition of free speech, and that isn't going to change anytime soon. So he said that we have a long tradition of free speech. That isn't going to, and we're going to guard it jealously. So we're going to guard free speech jealously. So that was Keir Starmer. Now, essentially the police are admitting we haven't been respecting free speech. That's exactly what everybody had always said. You haven't been respecting free speech. You've been going around bullying people on this pretext that you're involving in some hate crimes or whatever the hell that is, and you have not been respecting free speech, and contrary to what Keir Starmer said. Um, so I actually don't believe any of this. I think this is you can believe this as much as you can believe when Keir Starmer says how we have a long tradition of free speech in this country and that isn't going to change soon. If you're going to believe that, then you're going to believe this new policy spelled out by the UK Home Office. Anyway, that's the news from the UK, and then we can get on to the topic of the Hungarian election. Now, so as you know, the election is now really very soon. Tomorrow is April the 1st, so there's basically 11 days left to the election, and all the guns are now out. The EU is desperate to see the back of Viktor Orban, and they've essentially, the EU has been very smartly coaching the leader of the opposition in Hungary. This is this Peter Magyar. That just keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything at all that's going to be used against you. And don't give any interviews. He's given no interviews. Or go to these rallies, wave the Hungarian flag. Whenever you see a picture of him, he's always waving the Hungarian flag. So wave the Hungarian flag, and just talk about corruption. Just it's all corruption. And so essentially just get over the finish line without making any mistakes that Orban can use against you. There's nothing new about this election strategy. That's tried and true in many countries. Obviously, they tried that strategy in 2024 with Kamala Harris. So basically, they protected her from any interview because they knew that interviews would always be very dangerous. She could always say something that's going to be used against her. And so they basically said to Magyar, hey, just go around, look cute, look like a cool guy wearing your cool designer sunglasses and your leather jacket, wave the Hungarian flag, don't give any interviews, so that when the questions asked about what's going to be a policy in Ukraine, what's going to be a policy on immigration. Just you don't have to get into any of that. Just keep saying Orban is corrupt, and then you'll be home and cry. Now, I don't think that strategy has ever really worked for anyone. It didn't work for Kamala Harris. She ultimately had to answer questions, and of course, she was absolutely disastrous when she did so. And I don't think that's going to work for Magyar. But he has a shot, and I've seen how you can manufacture a candidate who's just against. He's just his opposition. He's just he is not Orban. It's just enough. That's it. And as long as that's all that he has to demonstrate, all he has to show, he is not Orban. That may just get you over the finish line. And I know I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. It worked obviously on a very um, big scale, obviously, in the United States, when you had somebody like Barack Obama, about whom no one knew anything, just came out of nowhere, and made vapid speeches, yes, we can, and we are the ones we've been waiting for, and all that nonsense. And that was enough to get him over the finish line. Helped along, of course, by disastrously weak opposition candidates such as Hillary Clinton during the primaries, and then, of course, John McCain in the general election. Now, so that worked for him, but of course, it worked in Yugoslavia in 2000, when also kind of a manufactured fake candidate. I mean, he really was manufactured by the State Department, Vojislav Kostunica, how they can get Milosevic out. And they knew, in the case of Yugoslavia, that bringing in one of these Western liberals, beloved by Soros and and Brussels and Washington, they weren't never going to win. That was, you couldn't beat Milosevic when you bring on someone like Zoran Djindjic and Vuk Draskovic, and none of these people were ever going to win. They knew that. So they kind of manufactured this supposedly conservative, conservative Vojislav Kostunica. And he also was completely vacuous, never didn't say anything about anything, just so, we got to free Yugoslavia of Milosevic. We got to get rid of Milosevic. We can't have any more Milosevic. No Milosevic. It's all about him. And that worked. It was a catastrophic decision. It was an absolutely disastrous decision. And you have to blame the people. I mean, we have to be, blunt about these things and say that democracy is often a very bad, very stupid form of government, because people make very bad, very stupid decisions because they're not very smart. It's unfortunate that, a lot of people just really aren't very smart. And that may sound terrible to say, well, we're all supposed to swear by democracy, but there's no particular reason why we should swear by democracy. Sometimes democracies get it right. Sometimes they get it wrong. Just like authoritarian governments, sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. So there's nothing magical about democracy. And everything that happened to the Serbs subsequent to the ouster of Milosevic is on them for having made an obviously disastrous decision. So something like this could well happen to the Hungarians. I don't know. I'm not making a prediction because it's very hard to know these things. The polls do show Peter Magyar ahead. However, all of these polls are pushed by very partisan organizations, so you can't really rely on them, because the polling organizations that are affiliated with the government, with Fidesz, tend to show Fidesz ahead, but the polling organizations affiliated with the opposition show Magyar ahead. So we have to be very wary of jumping to any conclusions in the polls. One thing that is it was always entirely predictable, was that the media is Brussels. I mean, much of the global media are funded by governments, and they're funded by Brussels. So this is we know this, how governments funnel money to media organizations. All these people like Politico, Euractiv, and all of these essentially these European news agencies. They get money from Brussels. And so they peddled a storyline that Brussels once peddled. And what they're doing here is, doing the tried and true model We did it in Romania, did it in Moldova, did it in Georgia, which is that it's Putin. The election is about Putin. It's about Russia. And so the story is, of course, about how the government of Viktor Orban is in cahoots with Russia. Now, as we've discussed many times here, Hungary has pursued a very pragmatic foreign policy. Pragmatic in the sense that it pursues a policy that is in the interest of the Hungarians. So, Hungary says, well, it is not in our interest to be against Russia. It is not in our interest. We get our energy, we get our oil, and we get our gas from Russia, and it isn't in our interest to cultivate bad relations against Russia. And so Hungary has said, well, they have gone along with the sanctions. We've had 19 rounds of EU sanctions. Hungary has supported them, even though Orban has repeatedly criticized the sanctions policy as being, completely pointless. In that the sanctions haven't in any way altered Russian policy. It hasn't affected the war in Ukraine one iota. But what it has done is, of course, it has impoverished the Europeans, because key to European economic activity was cheap Russian energy. And when Europeans didn't got signed off from that, now they don't have cheap Russian energy, and now they're in a right bind because there isn't any cheap Russian energy coming from the Middle East either. I mean, cheap energy coming from the Middle East either. So, having cut yourself off from energy from Russia, you suddenly find yourself when asking the question was, where are we going to get our energy from? We're not getting it from Russia. Now, the Strait of Hormuz is a real problem. Where are we going to get it from? Well, one possibility is the United States. But of course, the United States, as always, drives a very hard bargain. And particularly when you have somebody like Trump in the White House, who's going to make sure that you pay through the nose for your LNG imports. But anyway, the latest Russia hysteria in Hungary is this release of the recordings of conversations that Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó had with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Now, right away, you're wondering, well, whoa. I mean, these are private conversations that foreign ministers engage in. And you can't just go around releasing the private conversations of foreign ministers any more than private conversations of prime ministers or presidents. I mean, that supposedly has to be privileged. But obviously, these journalists, so-called journalists, who are essentially just EU, NED, CIA plants, they've been, the recipients of these telephone conversations. So obviously, the Western intelligence agencies, British, the Americans, who knows, who've been listening in on Szijjártó's telephone conversations, have now released these conversations to these so-called journalists, and therefore the gleeful Western media are running with the story that it's what we knew all along, that Hungary is working for Russia. Hungary is, basically it's the Hungary and Russia are one and the same, and Hungary is run by Putin. Now, of course, there's nothing whatever really in these telephone conversations. They are exactly what you might expect, which is that the Hungarians um, want to make use of Russia when it's in their interest, and the Russians want to make use of the Hungarians when it's in their interest to do so. But anyway, here is the most recent release that just came out today of this conversation that took place in 2024 between Seattle and Lavrov. So here's just one of the stories. This is in Euronews. And here it says leaked calls show Seattle discussing EU sanctions removal with Russia's Lavrov. It says a group of investigative journalists on Tuesday released a recording of a phone call between Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, in which Szijjártó offered to assist in removing a Russian oligarch's sister from EU sanctions at Lavrov's request. Now, this in itself is, of course, of no real interest here, because, first of all, the Hungarians have consistently said sanctions are bloody stupid. Second of all, one person cannot remove sanctions. They have, any removal of sanctions it requires unanimity. So Szijjártó can absolutely put in a pitch for the removal of sanctions against anyone, but he's got to have the other EU foreign ministers have to agree to it. Anyway, it says in the 94-second recording published on YouTube and disclosed by the investigative outlet Insider, Lavrov asked Szijjártó to help remove Gulbahor Ismailova, the sister of Russian oligarch Alisher Usmanov, from the EU sanctions list. I'm calling at the request of Alisher, so this is Lavrov speaking to Szijjártó. I'm calling at the request of Alisher, and he just asked me to remind you that you were doing something about his sister. The Hungarian minister responds by saying that together with the Slovaks, we are submitting a proposal to the European Union to delist her. And then here, a recording comes on Szijjártó, and then it says the scandal has emerged, or something, and then Szijjártó has defended his actions, arguing that speaking with Russian officials before and after such meetings, these are EU meetings, is part of routine diplomatic practice, which of course it is. It's that's kind of what foreign ministers are supposed to do. They're supposed to talk to other foreign ministers, and but of course for these people, these so-called journalists, and of course, as I say, the journalists are all, this is all funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. This is funded by Soros. This is funded by all the multitudinous NGOs that are funded by the EU. So this isn't not in any way an independent journalism. This is what they do, and their job. The reason why do they get this money? The reason they get this money is to discredit anyone who is not following the Brussels line. So they are there to discredit anything to do with the Hungarian leadership. And then here's the conversation with Szijjártó was recorded on the 30th of August, 2024 by unknown parties. Unknown parties. Okay. And then after Szijjártó returned from St. Petersburg to Budapest, Szijjártó told Lavrov that he would submit a proposal to remove Ismailova's name from the EU sanctions list next week. And as the new review period begins, it will be put on the agenda We will do our best to get her off. Under EU rules, sanctions must be renewed every 6 months by unanimity. Ismailova, along with Russian businessman Vyacheslav Kanto and sports minister Mikhail Degtyaryov, was removed from the EU's sanctions list in March of 2025. Well, that means that was agreed upon by the rest of the EU. The fact that Seattle was the one that put it forward. Well, it has to be done by unanimity. So you have to say, okay. So Lavrov asked him, do whatever you can to remove her from the sanctions list, and she was removed from the sanctions list. I mean, no one even knows who the hell this woman is, and we're supposed to be outraged by that this woman was removed from the sanctions list. This promiscuous sanctions list that the EU runs. Anyway, the European Union severed political ties with Russia following blah blah blah. Anyway. Following the publication of the recording, Seattle downplayed the incident and accused foreign intelligence services of tapping his phone. It has been known for some time that foreign secret services, with the active participation of Hungarian journalists, have been intercepting my phone conversations. Today, the eavesdroppers made another great discovery. They proved that I say the same thing in public as on the phone. Nice work. The minister added that his government had never agreed to sanction entities critical to Hungary's energy security and had opposed listing individuals when sanctions serve no clear purpose. We will continue to adhere to this approach in the future. Now, the EU, sensing, we got Russia, we got the Russia connection. So the EU, buffoons, the guys who are, in charge of the governments of the EU, of course, rushed in to express their indignation, absolute indignation, about this disclosure that, Seattle had discussions with Lavrov, which is exactly what you would expect. And the Seattle was apparently no great fan of sanctions. So today we had Donald Tusk, the imbecilic Polish prime minister, along with the Irish prime minister. Here's the headline from The Guardian. Tusk, an Irish PM, called Hungarian foreign minister's alleged links to Russia repulsive and sinister. Repulsive and sinister. And here we have the Poland's Tusk and Ireland's Martin blast Hungarian foreign minister's repulsive, sinister, and unacceptable back-channel talks with Russia. Separately, Ireland's Martin and Poland's Tusk very strongly criticized the latest disclosures on Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó's relations with Russia, calling his conversations with his Moscow counterpart repulsive and sinister. Okay, so Tusk and Martin said the tone of the recorded conversation showed unacceptable and deferential tone from the EU country's minister. I love this, the deferential tone. With the Irish PM saying it confirmed what many suspected about Hungary's doing the bidding for Russia within the bloc. Not quite sure what are you doing the bidding for? I mean, here it's saying, hey, can you lift the sanctions? So, these people, they have no idea. They're talking about, they have absolutely no idea who's this woman? Why has she been sanctioned? Does she actually deserve to be sanctioned? She's apparently, they say, the sister of an oligarch. Okay, well, if you're sanctioning an oligarch, he's not. They use this word oligarch. I mean, anyone in Russia who's a businessman who makes money or whatever, they always call him an oligarch. I mean, you never call Americans oligarchs. You never call the British wealthy lords in Britain as oligarchs. But anyone who's rich in Russia is always an oligarch. So this is the sister of an oligarch. I don't know. What does do you get a female gender? Do you get an oligarchess? Anyway, so if you're hitting the oligarch, maybe it's a little unfair also to hit a sister. It was always kind of a ridiculous policy in any case, going after these so-called oligarchs, because these oligarchs were always the ones who are very pro-Western for obvious reasons. This is where they make their money, and so if you want to hit Putin, probably it's not a great idea to go and hit the oligarchs, because that only ensures that they rally around Putin if you're suddenly denying them their ability to live in their comfortable houses in the West and enjoy all their yachts and their holidays in Lake Como and all the rest. So that only helps to rally the oligarchs to the Russian government. These are all pro-Western people. These are all people who love the West and who basically despise Russia. They always have. They send their children to schools in the West. So it was very strange for them to go hit the oligarchs. But here they in order to go after the oligarch, they go after the oligarch's sister. So they don't know Tusk and this Irish prime minister who he was in the Oval Office the other day. Had very little to say for himself there, but here now he suddenly found his voice talking about this repulsive phone conversation. So they have no idea whether this the sister of an oligarch actually deserved to be sanctioned. But they're absolutely disgusted that the Hungarian foreign minister made a pitch on her behalf. Anyway, so here so it goes. Hungary doing the bidding for Russia within the bloc. In unusually strong comments, it's not unusual. Whenever Tusk gets onto the subject of Hungary or Russia, Tusk is always making strong comments. And he says, what we have heard and what we had already suspected is merely a confirmation of the deeply disturbing political dependence of Viktor Orban government and his foreign minister directly on the authorities in Moscow. Well, the dependence comes from you're getting your energy, where you're going to get your energy. But also, dependence is hardly something the Europeans should be talking about. I mean, the Europeans are absolutely, totally, hopelessly, unabashedly dependent on the United States. Now, even these feeble attempts, and we'll probably talk about that next time. There won't be time today. These feeble attempts now to try to distance themselves from the U.S. Policy in Iran just shows how weak they are. They're not able to do anything. They're absolutely not able to distance themselves from the United States. They are totally, utterly dependent on the United States. And when it comes to subservience, when they go to see Donald Trump, however much they despise him, however much they hate him, however much they want to see him gone and disappeared once and for all, they have to pay obeisance to the leader of the West. So they've got a bit of a nerve to start talking about the deeply disturbing political dependence of Viktor Orban's government. Anyway, in his unusually strong comments, Tusk goes on. It has been a long time, if ever, since I have heard something so disheartening. What these recordings have revealed is more than just the political dependence of the Budapest government on Moscow. It has exposed just how unacceptable. Yeah, let me see. Just how unacceptable and bizarre this relationship truly is. Why is it bizarre? Anyway, so a foreign minister of a European nation, No, oh, in other words, Russia obviously is not a European nation. Here, Tusk is, one of the most repulsive figures in Europe. Thoroughly racist, as many Polish leaders are. Thoroughly racist. As a foreign minister of a European nation, a member of the European Union, reporting to the Russian foreign minister on the completion of a task and asking for patience because he knows he still has several more tasks to carry out. One could hardly imagine anything more repulsive. It is absolutely disqualifying. Um, so, and anyway, and then Tusk goes on. Poland loves Hungary, of course. This is the classic. Poland loves Russia. We love the Hungarian people, just like we love the Russian people. Poland loves Hungary, and Poles adore. They just absolutely adore the Hungarian people. Ours is a friendship that has endured for decades and centuries. Completely untrue, incidentally. This is the legend of this great historic friendship between Poland and Hungary, which doesn't exist. It's totally made up that there's ever been any particular love between Poland and Hungary. This is why it is so important to me that everyone in Hungary hears this. Nothing has changed on our end. We are glad to be part of the European community alongside the Hungarian people. The tragedy is that Viktor Orban's government, certainly Orban himself and Minister Szijjártó, effectively left the European Union a long time ago. This is a variation on that familiar cliche. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. We didn't leave the European Union. Orban effectively left the European Union. So yes, this is the usual overwrought language, but it's all done in order to persuade the Hungarians that once you get rid of Orban, you will be accepted within the community. Now, the issue that you're going to be accepted, you're not going to be accepted. You have to change your policy. It's not just, hey, we don't have Orban anymore. We got this new cool guy. He's a young guy who looks great in the leather jacket. Oh, and then now we're cool, and now everyone's going to love us. That's not going to happen. They're going to want a change in policy. And I don't think the Hungarians have fully understood this, that this is going to be a requirement that you change your policy. Just like I don't think the Serbs understood when they ousted Milosevic, that what was required was a massive change in policy. And so, yeah, you're going to have to change your policy on immigration. And no more of this, we're not going to take any migrants. Basically, we're going to have a zero migration policy. No, that's not going to happen. But also that, we're not going to get involved in this war, which I think Hungarians don't want to get involved in this war. No, you're going to get involved in this war. You are very much going to get involved in this war. They're going to want a change in policy. Just simply a change in personnel. The EU is not going to be satisfied with that. Anyway, this is. Let me just go on for here. And then Martin, this is the Irish Prime Minister, um, weighing in. I think it's a very sinister development. It confirms what many suspected, that the Hungarian government has been doing the bidding for Russia within the European Union for quite some time. The deferential tone in the conversation. You remember the deferential tone that he had when he sat in the Oval Office, playing with his tie as Trump just rambled on. The deferential tone in the conversation was alarming. And it really is a very serious situation that within the European Union, you have that type of behavior. And it is very revealing of the relationship between the Hungarian government and the Russian government. It's unacceptable. Why does something have to be acceptable to him? I mean, is this the new measure that something has to be acceptable to the Irish prime minister? Anyway, and then we had the Czech president Petro Pavel. Now, Petro Pavel, who is the Czech president, he's a former NATO general, absolute dimwit. He's another one of these thick as two planks kind of person. Hoisted into power because he's former NATO general, and I think some people, who should know better, in the alt media, kind of thought highly of him at some point. I don't know why, but people people have staggeringly bad judgment often in the alt media. Anyway, this Czech president Petro Pavel also chimed in to express his disgust, his absolute disgust. And he said, Czech President Petro Pavel has also responded to the latest disclosures in Hungary, urging the Czech government to reevaluate its relation with the Hungarian government as a result of unacceptable, so something is also unacceptable to him, discussions between Budapest and Moscow. Pavel, a retired senior NATO general, they always have that, retired senior NATO general. A general is by definition somebody who's a senior officer. So I don't know how you can be, if you're senior, you're a general, you're already a senior officer. But anyway, and former chair of the Alliance's military committee. So in other words, he's just a NATO hack. Is well known for his critical view of Russia and its increasingly assertive stance in the region. Where is this increasingly assertive stance? But okay. And interference in European politics. Talking to Czechka television, he said, I find it absolutely unacceptable for an EU and NATO member state to circumvent the rules in this way and share sensitive, if not classified, information with our adversary. All right, so there's a lot of interesting point there. What was the sensitive, if not classified? Well, was it sensitive? Was it classified? I don't even know what that means. Sensitive, if not classified information. What was sensitive about it? He said, can you, put in a word and get the sanctions lifted? What does a Hungarian minister care whether the sanctions are are imposed on the sister of an oligarch? Says, well, can you get get the sanctions off her lifted? Well, I'll do what I can. Sensitive. This is very sensitive, if not classified information with our adversary. So the adversary. Notice how he puts it in, this adversary. So are the Czechs going to war? Are they ready for war? We should certainly reevaluate our relationship with Hungary based on this, specifically regarding what we do and do not share with them. Because, of course, it's simply wrong for a NATO member to undermine our security in such a way. This is very interesting. So that's what I mean by this guy is as thick as two planks. Is he says NATO member is undermining our security. How was this conversation about the sanctions undermining anybody's security? He doesn't know. He's just a, I mean, the guy's just oozes stupidity. So he just says that, oh, it's undermining our security. NATO generals, I should say, are well known for their real dim-wittedness. I mean, you really have to be a really stupid person to get high up within the NATO hierarchy. Um, and so he says, well, this is undermining our security. And, and anyway, but this was quite, what then happened was actually quite amusing. Um, because the Czech government, because I had an election recently, and this guy Babiš won that election, and he kind of weighed in on this, and here asked what he wanted the government to do. Pavel added, "I'm not sure about a formal statement, but on a practical level, at least from my perspective, this should mean scaling back all ties with Peter Szijjártó. No more ties with Peter Szijjártó. All ties. We don't want any ties with him. He is completely untrustworthy, and Viktor Orban certainly knew about it as well. I believe that things like this simply cannot be allowed to slide." But the Czech foreign minister, Petr Machinka, dismissed his calls, telling this publication that as foreign policy remains a prerogative of the government, Pavel's comments were irrelevant. So, so we have this, he's sounding off. And the Guardian and all the media, oh, well, Petro Pavel, he's made this strong statement. And basically he says, the post of president is a ceremonial one, and he doesn't have anything to do with policy. Anyway, here was another conversation with Szijjártó, and here it was Szijjártó who was asking for a favor. So here, in the earlier conversation, they said, "Oh, he shows how he's beholden to Russia. He's doing the bidding of Russia." And then but in this conversation, this was the earlier conversation, which was published a few days ago. It was on the contrary, Szijjártó, who was asking Lavrov for a favor, and the favor was, "Hey, this is good guy in Slovakia, this politician in Slovakia. Can you actually, have him come to Moscow? That will boost his credentials, and he might win an election." So in this case, it was the Hungarians who were asking the Russians for a favor. So that. So he's doing the bidding of Putin. Well, actually, here's the other way around. The Hungarians are asking for a favor from Russia. But anyway, here is this was the another one. This is all part of these Western intelligence agencies who are listening in on Szijjártó's phone conversations, and they're saying, well, they published a transcript of this call between Szijjártó and Lavrov. Hungarian minister asks Moscow to help Slovak ally before election, leaked transcript suggests. And so here is this transcript. Now this is Szijjártó speaking, and it says, "I understand this may sound strange coming from Hungarian conservatives, but we are hoping for the victory of the Social Democrats." That's the Social Democrats in Slovakia. That's the group that includes Robert Fico, as they are the only rational force in Slovak politics that operates without foreign influence. All the others are practically funded by Soros, which is true. If the opposition wins, it will be a tragedy for Central European cooperation. It's also important that the Slovak National Party of Speaker of Parliament Danko passes the 5% threshold. We hope they succeed, but the only chance for the continuation of the coalition is if the governing party wins the election. So Prime Minister Pellegrini was here yesterday and told us that if you're Prime Minister, would receive him even for half an hour, that would be of great help in winning the election. That was Mishustin, who was the prime minister, Russian prime minister at the time. So just give him half an hour, receive him even for half an hour. That would be a great help in winning the elections. He told us this as much. This is much more important for the Slovak society than a trip to Washington. That is why he asked us to ask you, but we would also ask you ourselves whether it would be possible to arrange such a thing that your prime minister would receive the Slovak prime minister in Moscow sometime in February. Szamuely allegedly told Lavrov. This is a big request, but I will pass it on to the prime minister, replied Lavrov. I understand it would be great if you could manage to arrange it. Pellegrini asked us for help in this matter because he knows how good our relations are and that our presidents also have good relations. That is why he entrusted us with this. Okay, and then Lavrov then said, Peter, I will pass on this request today, and I will get in touch as soon as there is any development. So it's very much Szamuely pleading with Lavrov, and Lavrov saying, well, I'll do what I can. Thank you. Let me emphasize once more how important it is for us that the coalition in Slovakia can continue. If they cannot continue, there is no chance of pragmatic cooperation in Central Europe, and we would lose a great deal, says Szamuely. You have no idea how grateful I am for this conversation. This is a sign of friendship. All right, so that's the the conversation. All of this is entirely in accordance with what the public record is. So there's nothing here. I mean, if you had a politician who was breathing fire against the Russians and demanding sanctions, and then surreptitiously he was calling the Russian foreign minister and saying, "Hey, can you help us out with organizing an official visit to Russia, or or I'm ready to help you out on having sanctions lifted on someone." Then you could say, okay, well, that's a scandal because in public he's very different from what he is in private, and that's obviously is a scandal in politics. But if you're exactly the same in public as you are in private, but namely you're against sanctions, you say sanctions are really stupid and destructive, and you also say that it makes no sense to turn your back on Russia. No sense in terms of physical security. No sense in terms of energy security. And then you say the same thing in your private conversation. Then there's no scandal here. This whole thing, this fake, phony scandal that's being now whipped up by the usual Politico, the Guardian, You're Active. It's the familiar crowd. It's all about trying to manipulate the election, and so I'm somehow suggesting that there's Russian interference in Hungary, and suggesting this is what Tusk and the rest of them are suggesting. Well, to the Hungarians, if you vote out Orban, then things are going to be nice for you. You're going to be accepted in our little club. You'll become one of us. But you got to vote him out. So that's kind of why they're whipping up this hysteria. This is shocking, horrific. Wow. So we need a government in Budapest that's going to be similar to us. It's going to be singing from the same song sheet. Anyway, let me now turn to our locals community. These, and I should say that those who want to talk to me and want me to answer your questions, address your comments, then you should come over to our community, the locals community. Ideally, you'll put you'll subscribe. I mean, I think that's the whole point of the community. Ideally, that you will subscribe, but you can join the community and be, enjoy all of the benefits and all of the excellent content that we provide on the Gaggles local community. We're very talented people, very interesting people, very very smart people who are members of our community, and it's really well worth your while joining the community. And as I say, you'll have me addressing your comments. So it's very nice you comment on YouTube, but I don't have the time to go through all the comments on YouTube, but I do care about our locals community. So this is where I'm going to go, and of course when we go to the locals community, then there's also the issue of the dogs, because they're the people who keep the locals community going, and who make their complaints about the tip jar. Uh, um, they make their voices heard, shall we say? Anyway, so thank you very much, everybody who is a member of our community. Thank you for all of your comments and questions and so on. And so let me go here. So and so Anne Marie, always very good to see you, Anne Marie. Our resident um, music specialist, music scholar, and musical expert who was performed at the highest level, highest international level for many years. Worked with the some of the finest musicians, finest conductors, composers of the 20th and 21st centuries, and has amazing experiences to recount. I've been the beneficiary of many of her really fascinating stories of working with extraordinary talent. And so we're always, again, it's part of why it's a great idea to join this community, that you can enjoy the benefits of Anne Marie's extraordinary insights, the insights of somebody who plays music at the very highest level. I'm obviously in awe of anyone who's able to do that, but I mean, even more in awe that she allows us to enjoy her experiences and her insights for us. So thank you so much, Anne Marie, as always, for your generosity and for allowing us to share your extraordinary world. So thank you, Anne Marie. Anyway, Anne Marie says, "So sorry, George, that I didn't leave a comment on the code." That's all right. I mean, there's time for that. But you actually wrote a very interesting one already. Just to say, I played the suite a few years ago, and when I listen to it now, it felt all as though it were only yesterday. A wonderful piece that's great fun to play. Yeah, it really is. It's on our locals page, the Hari János suite. Very, very Hungarian. So if you like Hungarian music, and you really get a sense of what Hungary is about, then listen to this music. I wrote a kind of a short introduction, but but obviously, if Anne Marie, if you ever have the time, then I'd love to hear more about your own experiences of playing it. And then so it was a wonderful piece, great fun to play. I've never played the opera and don't know it, but I wonder if I might play it one day. Well, that would be interesting. Anyway, and then Anne Marie goes on. So, but we are currently rehearsing an opera by George Kurtag, composed in 2018. I have to say that I don't really know much about him, but I'm going to look into that. An opera by George Kurtag, composed in 2018, set to a French language libretto, adapted by the composer from the play Endgame. So that's Samuel Beckett. Well, that's that sounds going to be quite challenging. I mean, reading Endgame or reading anything by Samuel Beckett is quite a challenge, but an opera based on that will be quite challenging. I'm really looking forward to listening to it. and also learning more about it. So I'm sure, Anne Marie, that's going to be a real challenge for you. The premiere will take place next week, and since Kortag has turned 100, the theater will invite you to the event. Huh. That's really interesting. I wonder if you'll be able to make it. Is there any chance? I know it's a tall order. Is there any chance of our hearing some kind of an excerpt or anything like that, or even, if we can't hear an excerpt, but maybe some publicity material that's available, because there is some publicity material. It would be fantastic to post it on our locals board. But anyway, but certainly interesting. If he's 100 years old, whether he will be able to attend in person. I'm gonna look into it and see. Maybe we can, see if we can post something about Kurtag and about this opera. That was really interesting. So thank you so much, Anne Marie. Thank you as always for your generosity. Dale Owens, good to see you. This says, this use of the word communities is also irritating me. Yeah, no, I think and every time you hear the word community, it has a very chilling effect. And that's the whole point of it. It's meant to chill you, because you don't really know what what a community is, what are communities, and they're also quite fictional. You kind of create some kind of a community, presumably like the female community. Apparently, all women belongs to some kind of a community. The gay community. Apparently, everybody who's gay belongs to some nebulous community. Who'd have thunk everyone belongs to this community? So, but it's a way of typecasting people and in ascribing to people a point of view that they don't have. But you can just simply say, well, that's what you think. So, well, that isn't really my thing. But since you're a member of the community, that's exactly what you must think. So yeah, it's very, very chilling kind of expression. And here is Marty. Always very good to see you. Thank you for that picture of two-tier Kia and with Giuliani outside Downing Street. Look at Giuliani. He's wearing these suits, and there, he got the job done. He got the job. Everybody said for years that ISIS was a creation of the Western intelligence services. It was done in order to topple the Assad government in Damascus. It was done in order to push the Russians out of Syria. It was done in order to push Iranians out of Syria, and all the pretense of the global war of terror, the war against ISIS, it was always a fraud. A lot of people said that. A lot of people, and it was always dismissed, even though there was plenty of evidence over the years, plenty of evidence that they were working in cahoots with the Western intelligence services, with Israel. You remember the email between Hillary Clinton and her foreign policy advisor, the guy who became national security advisor to Biden. You remember when he said, "Oh, in Syria, Al Qaeda is our ally." He actually said that Al Qaeda is our ally in Syria. That was dismissed. However much people publicized it, hey, Al Qaeda is our ally, and then this global war on terror was always a fraud. And here we are, and there's the proof. This horrific, terrifying Islamist is kind of welcomed in Downing Street. We're all on the same page, and we had all the evidence. Remember when ISIS? It was always very strange. Never attacked Israel. Never attacked Israel. It was always attacking other Arab governments, and then of course ISIS received medical treatment from Israel, and there it is, Jelani. So anyway, thank you, Marty. And then Marty then posts a picture. Oh yes, yes, that's the that was from today. I think that's from today with Kaya Kalas. The reason that it happened today was that we had another one of these meetings. We always have meetings, and the meeting pertained to Bucha. Remember Bucha? It's another one of these stories about how Russians massacred in cold blood some people uh, in Bucha. It was, it was familiar. Anyone who followed the wars in the Balkans, you were always kind of finding these bodies, bodies in the ditch, and it was a familiar routine. And of course, they did the same thing when the Russians withdrew from Bucha, and lo and behold, they suddenly find bodies that were executed. That's like the found. This was throughout the war in the Balkans. There was always finding bodies of executed. Anyway, so today the Europeans, every EU state, with the exception, of course, yes, of Hungary, every single one signed on to this document about Bucha, and so here is where are we? Yeah. So this was issued by Kaya Kallas, and here that's her diplomatic service of the European Union. Joint statement on the occasion of the informal meeting of EU foreign ministers. So look at all the states. They all signed on. Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, even Slovakia. Only absentee is Hungary. And here's this joint statement. We gather today in Kiev and in Bucha to commemorate the victims of the mass atrocities in Bucha committed during Russia's temporary occupation of the past. Now, one thing that one says, you don't have any evidence that this ever took place, this mass execution ever took place. And I think the Russians say, well, all right, what are the names of the victims? Just give us the names of the victims, and then we'll have a clear idea of who perpetrated the massacres. Present us with the forensic findings. Give us the forensic findings. And then again, you would have to come up with the names to go with the bodies, and then the detailed forensic findings. No one's ever provided any of that. So they're talking about these mass atrocities that took place committed during Russia's temporary occupation of parts of the Kiev region in 2022, and to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to ensuring full accountability of the Russian Federation for any violations of international law in or against Ukraine, including aggression in violation of the Charter of the United Nations. Now, the thing is that they've been pushing this whole thing of bringing the Russians to trial on the charge of aggression, and obviously the EU has no jurisdiction on this matter. The International Criminal Court has jurisdiction over Russia only because Ukraine belatedly joined the ICC in order to put itself, so everything that happened subsequent to 2014 came within the purview of the ICC. That was what the Ukraine did. Ukraine joined late and said, well, you can investigate anything that happened subsequent to 2014, nothing before that. Now, by doing that, the ICC could investigate anything that Russia did in Ukraine, because although Russia doesn't, it isn't a signatory of the Rome Statute, by the fact that Ukraine makes a pitch to the ICC, please investigate these alleged war crimes, then Russia gets investigated. The problem they have with the crime of aggression is that that even then you cannot bring up the aggression. You have to specifically. You can only um, investigate aggression um, with allegedly committed by states who sign the Kampala Accords. So it becomes much more difficult. If you didn't sign the Kampala Accords, then you cannot be investigated for that. So they know that the ICC cannot investigate the issue of the crime of aggression, but they're very keen on this. So the EU is very keen on pushing this whole investigation of the crime of aggression. The problem is they don't have any right to do any of this. They don't have any judicial powers. I mean, it's just the EU. Kaja Kallas can set up any bloody court that she wants, but it's not. It doesn't have any authority. It cannot just investigate whatever he wants, because it's like I can set up a court, but it doesn't mean I have any right to judge anyone. But the EU have been pushing this thing about, we're going to set up the special tribunal. It's special. It's a unique tribunal devoted to one crime only, devoted to one alleged perpetrator only. It's alleged the crime committed by Russia, and the criminal being Russia. Now, no such court exists. You cannot have a court like that that is only geared towards investigating one particular alleged perpetrator. But the EU is pushing for this, that we're going to set up this special tribunal. And so here was anyway, they're signing on to this document. It's a kind of a disgrace, absolute disgrace, that the Europeans, I mean, you expect this kind of ridiculous nonsense from the Germany or France or whatever, but you always hope that there'd be a little bit more sense from Slovakia, but no, you don't get you don't get too much sense from Europe. Anyway, here's was this entirely Europe? Was the UK or signatory here? So no, this is of course it's just the EU. That's why Kaja Kallas did this. Okay. Anyway, so we reaffirm our commitment to ensuring full accountability for war crimes and the other most serious crimes committed in connection with Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, and so on, blah, blah, blah. In this context, we welcome the recent progress within the framework of the Council of Europe as part of the EU towards the operationalization. Listen, I love these. They invent these new words. Operationalization of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression. We are operationalizing the special tribunal. It's very special. Only one perpetrator and only one crime. And we Europeans, we get to run it. We just set up our own court, our own private little court. And we're going to set up our own lawyers, our own prosecutors, and our own judges, and we're going to put the Russians on trial. Isn't it cute? Special Tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine and the establishment of the International Claims Commission. We express our support for investigation by the International Criminal Court into the situation in Ukraine and call for full cooperation by all state parties. And then, we emphasize the accountability is an indispensable element of a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace. But of course, they're not going to be investigating anybody else. They're not going to investigate Ukraine. They're not going to investigate all of the parties who made this war happen. That's not going to be part of it. It's just Russia. In this 5th year of Russia's war of aggression, we reaffirm our continuing firm and unwavering support for Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. Okay. And then Kaja Kallas, not content with that, then sent out a tweet Bucha has come to symbolize the cruelty of Russia's war. Of the civilians killed, many were shot at close range. How does she know all this? How does she know? No one's published any forensic reports. How does she know they were shot at close range? Just make this stuff up. This is how they worked it in the Balkans. They just made stuff up about people being shot at close range. All you can do is you can find bullet holes. You can find bullet holes if indeed they found them. You don't know whether they were shot at close range or what. Some with their hands tied behind their backs. Okay, who were they? 4 years after these mass killings, we remember the victims. What happened here cannot be denied. The EU is committing to ensure that these crimes do not go unpunished, including by supporting the special. Anyway, so that's Kaya Kallas. And anyway, going back to, there was this picture that was illustrated here by Marty of Kaya together with this wonderful man, Zelensky, with his begging bowl out. Anyway, so thank you so much, Marty. Now, so Vic Shakapopoulos says, "Dear George, I always appreciated, especially as a non-native English speaker myself, your rich vocabulary." Oh, thank you. And at times flowery use of language. May I therefore ask you for some help? Oh, I don't know. Could you please explain to me the meaning of the word sustainability? I keep running into it almost every day somewhere, and it drives me crazy. I don't know what the hell it is supposed to represent. Well, I'm not sure I can help you very much. The way, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's used all the time, and it doesn't. In the way people use it, they don't attach any specific meaning to it. In general, sustainability means that a way of life is can be can continue to exist. So when they talk about, say, a sustainable environment, it means it's an environment that can maintain itself. So you have a sustainable agriculture. It means you till the land, you plant whatever, and then you till the land, and there'll be something left of the land so that you can plant some more crops next year. So it means something you don't essentially overindulge yourself. So it means that you can always have something for next year and the year after and the year after that. The problem with that is that, well, that's kind of common sense, and generally people have been doing that. I mean, it's quite pointless to have an agriculture that is non-sustainable. I mean, if you're just going to basically overplant, then you're going to destroy the soil, and then there'll be nothing further for you to plant the next year. So it's always, well, or if you kill too many animals, then it's no longer sustainable, because now you don't have a a proper it's just a proper farming community, because you basically eaten all the animals and you don't have enough for next year and the year after. So that's a kind of a common sense understanding of sustainability, but it's acquired the aura of this buzzword, and you have professors and teaching sustainability, and I have no idea what they mean, other than its usual way of intimidating everybody and forcing them, hey, cut back on your consumption. And that's really what's behind it. Like the EU, which is all enthusiastic about forcing others to cut back. Hey, cut back on your gas consumption. Hey, cut back on your driving. Hey, cut back on your travels. Hey, cut back on your meat consumption. Hey, cut back on eating altogether. Hey, cut back on drinking whatever you want. So and how do they justify all of this? Well, sustainability, because if we do all we do, we indulge ourselves, and we enjoy our our life, our brief life on this earth. If we enjoy ourselves too much, then it's not going to be sustainable. So it's really all about encouraging people to stop having a good time, stop enjoying themselves, and devote themselves to the higher goals as set out for them by the EU and the various worthies like John Kerry and the rest, who have their minds on maintaining green energy and environmental sustainability. So that's the best I can do, Vic. Thank you for your question. And here's Marty again. Are you a gaggler? Yes, it's showing us UK border control. That's a great picture. UK border control. Are you a gaggler? The answer, your best bet is just to say no, you're not, because you might just be hauled in, and for prolonged and gruesome questioning. So basically, say if you say you're a gaggler, you might have somebody poking around in your mouth, as I did, to get DNA samples out of you. Oh, it's not intrusive. We're just going to stick our finger into your mouth and get DNA samples. So anyway, thanks, Marty. Cynthia, always good to see you, Cynthia. She'll say Cynthia, who's our film scholar and film expert, um, and with an encyclopedic knowledge of film and cinema history, and above all, film production in all its complexities and in all of the mechanics of the making of films, in every aspect of it, from production to music to editing and everything else. And Cynthia was always on top of that and provides us with amazing briefings every week when we have our weekly Monday night screening. And yesterday, we screened Steven Spielberg's Munich. It was a film made in 2005. And so watch the film. It's not a film for everyone, and I certainly have my own reservations about it. It's interesting to watch, but take a look, see what you think. But above all, while you're watching, read Cynthia's very learned, very interesting, very insightful comments, and I think that they will help you gain a better understanding of the film and what the filmmakers were trying to do. So, watch the film, make up your own mind what you think of it. But as you make up your mind, enjoy Cynthia's very interesting and very learned comments. Anyway, Cynthia's here says it is a dark irony that the U.S. is deploying the USS Tripoli against Iran, given the name traces to Tripoli in modern-day Libya, a flashpoint of the First Barbary War. Yes, historically, Tripoli was a Barbary Coast vassal of the Ottoman Empire, where state-backed piracy trafficked in enslaved whites. Yet the Ottomans never broke Persia. Its terrain and resistance kept it from becoming a similar reservoir of enslaved whites. So will Iran prove once again to be where empires go to die? Well, very, very interesting. And of course, you're right about the, uh, the slave trade, which the Ottomans very much engaged in, and that was the raison d'être of the Ottoman Empire. And of course, the slaves that the Ottomans traded in were, of course, the Slavs. That's where the word Slav comes from. So they were the slaves of the Ottomans. So you're right. The Ottomans never broke Persia. We'll see how the well, that the how it goes. But certainly, I think the least one can say is that over the past month, Persia has put up a very impressive fight and have shown that they are ready to resist. And you have to admire them for that. We don't know how this is going to turn out, but their refusal to succumb to forces far more powerful than they are is immensely impressive. And because of that, because they've established their courage and their willingness to resist, because of that, their international standing is enhanced a millionfold. So in comparison with the very bad reputation that they once had, I mean, all the years of the rule of the Ayatollahs and a terrible um, media campaign that was waged against them, and they were kind of um, insulted and denigrated in the media. I think all that's going to go. I think that will disappear, and I think the perception of Iran will be very different. I think people will come to admire um, a nation that is willing to put up such a fight, and because of that, the United States and particularly Israel cannot just let this go. Cannot just simply walk away, because you walk away and suddenly Iran is the global hero of the hour. Israel definitely cannot put up with something like that. So anyway, thank you so much, Cynthia. And then here, Cynthia continues and says, speaking of white slavery in the context of the Barbary slave trade and the Barbary vassal states of the Ottoman Empire, how about we feature a Don Quixote film that explores these things? G.W. Pabst classic Don Quixote. Oh, let's write this down. G.W. Pabst. This pen doesn't work. G.W. Pabst. Don Quixote. That's a very interesting suggestion. Don Quixote um, is a whimsical, humorous adaptation, but also highlights subtle social critique. Grigory Kazintsev, 1957 Soviet film, blends satire with a poetic storytelling, while Alejandro's Amenabar's 2025 The Captive offers a modern retelling emphasizing captivity and slavery. That's an interesting one. That's an interesting idea. Whether we can do a kind of a kind of the some classic like Don Quixote, and then featuring a number of versions of it. Um, uh, it's a pity that Orson Welles's version isn't really available. I mean, because then we could have it. I think, as I've said before, it was once screened at MoMA in New York. The people who saw it really, I mean, it was put together and edited by someone other than Wells. Wells just simply left a lot of footage and never really got around to editing it. So somebody else edited it, and people who watched it really were not very impressed with it. So we don't know what Wells himself would have made of it. Um, but even that, I think, is not available. I remember looking once to see somewhere on the internet you could find it, but I haven't been able to find it. But I think it's a good idea that we could find a various interpretation. The Soviets are very interesting because the Soviet era was very much into revering the classics. They loved the classics, and they made enormous. They put in a lot of effort in adapting classical literature to cinema. So that's something we could also look at how the Soviets adapted the classics cinema. So that's a good idea. I'm going to see whether we can think about Don Quixote and maybe a couple of other great works of literature and all the different adaptations that have been made. Madame Bovary. There've been a number of film adaptations of that. So I like that idea. Thank you so much, Cynthia. And then Stone River, always very good to see you. Thank you. Says George, this legislation apply only at the point of entry to the country. No, I think as I read it out, it sounds like it can be applied even when you exit the country, and I think can even be and applies even when you're transiting the country. Let me just look this up. Because we're looking at it, and I seem to remember that issue came up right at the beginning. Um, where are we? So, right at the beginning here, yeah. So the police officers at ports play a key role in countering the threat from hostile activity. And under Schedule 3 to the counterterrorism law, to stop, question, search, and if necessary, detain people entering or leaving the UK. This also applies to those traveling within the UK on board a ship or aircraft. So entering to the UK, exit from the UK, and anyone traveling within the UK on board a ship or aircraft. So you get on a plane in Manchester to come to London. Then the same thing could apply. So okay. So point of entry. So no. So it's entry, exit, or anywhere traveling within the UK. And Marty says, "See it, say it, sorted." Yeah, that's it. That's yeah. Yeah, there it is. Say it, sorted. That's the watchword here. And then so anyway, thank you, Stone River. And then Robert, always good to see you, Robert. And thank you so much for your generosity. And Robert says, in the libertarian view, internal state security functions to safeguard the state from the threat posed by rebellion. It's only by way of security provision on the market where security services are vetted under direct consumer control, where security functions to safeguard individual rights and property rights. Well, I agree. That's the theory behind it. But of course, the state always acquires greater and greater powers because the state, of course, becomes a very powerful entity in itself. And it obviously, when it comes to the United Kingdom, it isn't in any way threatened by any external actor. I mean, it's nonsense. There are no threats to the UK coming from outside. Um, there aren't really any threats to the UK coming from inside. I lived, like if Dale Owens, who's I'm sure he lived through also the heyday of the IRA's terror campaign during the 1970s and 80s. There was nothing like this at that time, and the IRA was blowing up buildings on the mainland. It was accused of having assassinated Lord Mountbatten. It was accused of having assassinated Ari Neve, the Tory MP. It was accused of having twice tried to assassinate Margaret Thatcher at Brighton in 1984, and then there was an attempt to shoot Downing Street. And during that time, there was nothing like this. So, today, there are no threats to the state. So where's the threat coming from? Well, the threat is coming from the public. You have, one government after another is deeply hated. The public realizes that none of their interests are catered for by the governments. Again, the governments have their own agenda. That agenda has nothing to do with making people's lives better or more prosperous or safer. So, what is it that Keir Starmer and Boris Johnson and Theresa May and the Indian guy Rishi Sunak, they're not in the business of doing anything for ordinary people, and so they're naturally afraid of them. And all of this is these security measures about hostile activity. Yeah, hostile. Who whom are you hostile toward? Well, you're hostile to the government. That's what it is. You're hostile. They're hostile towards us, and because we're afraid of your hostility towards us, we can threaten you, bully you, and terrify you into submission. You want to do this. You want to do it again. You want to have somebody poking around in your mouth again. You want to be interrogated again. Next time it's going to be worse, because that's a way of coercing obedience from their subjects. Anyway, thank you so much, Robert. And then Summer Petros, good to see you. And says, just arrived, sorry, late. Wondering if you had any further reflections on your recent trip to the precious stone in the Silver Seas, this blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England. This is John of Gaunt, one of the most beautiful speeches celebrating the glory of England. It's from Richard II. Um, the play, which then started the whole War of the Roses, because because at the end of it, it's called Richard II is murdered, and that leads to a brutal, bitter fight for the succession, and but this was the highlight of Richard II is the speech by John of Gaunt, and this blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England. Yeah, that's right. Anyway, thank you so much, some Petros. Thank you for your generosity. Look forward to seeing you in Hungary. And then Robert says the Israeli war on Palestine, with a certain grim of certainty, has taken root in New Jersey. Reports say Alexander Heifler of Hoboken, a member of the Jewish Defense League, has been arrested for plotting a Molotov attack on the Brooklyn home of Palestinian advocate Nadine Kiswani. The FBI, ever the attentive stage manager, managed to intervene just before opening night. Of course, always on hand to foil plots that invariably, the FBI itself masterminded. So I don't know what the truth of this is, but it's definitely a somewhat um, yeah, somewhat it's troubling. But that's generally what's going to come to the United States and very much come to Europe, as it already has. The wars of the Middle East will come to Europe, into European cities, because of mass migration. So there, so thank you about that from New Jersey. And then Vic Shakapopoulos says, did you discuss politics at your reunion in London? No, we did not. Absolutely did not discuss. I did not discuss politics, and not only did I not discuss politics at the reunion, I gave a pledge to the border authorities saying that I will not be doing any podcasting while I'm on British soil. I mean, not that I necessarily would be in trouble, but I wanted to make it clear to them that I had no intention of doing anything that might prolong my stay in this blessed isle. So that's why there were no live streams last week, and there were no podcasts last week. So anyway, Cynthia says Spielberg's Munich was a warning about conflicts that refuse to stay contained, how vengeance follows people home and quietly rewrites the rules. New Jersey wasn't meant to be the sequel, but the script seems to be writing itself. No, that's very true. I think that was the thrust of the film. We don't really have time now to discuss the film, but I'd be interested um, what people might think of it. As I said, watch the film. It's a little long. It's not for everybody. Read Cynthia's comments, and then maybe next time, if you have comments or questions about the film, we could discuss that, because there are a number of aspects of the film that I think are worth discussing. And then Vic Shakopoulos says, as far as I remember, you follow football. Why did Slovakia, which doesn't recognize Kosovo as a country, play against it in the World Cup qualifiers? Very good question. And why did it lose? Also, what happens with the Iranian national team? It qualified for the Cup, but if the USA, the host country, is at war with Iran, I guess it may cause some complications. Has anything like it ever happened before? Well, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, the first of all, the question of Slovakia and Kosovo. Slovakia should not have played Kosovo. I mean, either you're going to make a principled stand or you're not. And Slovakia made a principled stand, as did Greece and as did Spain, that they will not recognize the unilateral secession of Kosovo, because they obviously are very concerned about themselves being vulnerable to unilateral secession. So they say, okay, we're not going to recognize Kosovo. We don't recognize unilateral secession. So they made that principled stand. That meant that Kosovo cannot join NATO, and that meant Kosovo cannot join the EU. So I don't know what you're doing playing football against them. I mean, this doesn't exist. This entity does not exist. So it shouldn't have done it. Slovakia should not have played Kosovo. Now maybe Slovakia thought, well, we'll be disqualified if we don't. Okay, well then be disqualified. That's the whole point of making principled stands. I mean, you can't just say, well, we'll make a principled stand, but hey, we don't want to be disqualified from the World Cup. Oh, we don't want to go without dinner. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do that. Well, then don't make a principled stand. Then just simply recognize Kosovo. You can't just sort of say, well, we don't recognize Kosovo, but we really care about the World Cup, and so we'll play Kosovo. So, it's a very tawdry performance by Slovakia. But anyway, and then it says, also, why did it lose? I don't know. I mean, probably because they're not very good. Also, what happens with the Iranian national team? Now, Trump has said that the Iranian national team is welcome to play. No, he's not going to do anything at all to hamper Iran's playing in the United States. So that's a way. Now, whether it's happened before in that particular context, I don't think it in that way. The, Britain and Argentina were at war in 1982 during the time of the World Cup. Luckily, they were not drawn against each other, which would have been a little difficult. But nonetheless, they were both in the World Cup, and there was obviously some concern that Britain and Argentina would play against each other. I mean, but I guess there have been times, sporting events that are taking place while wars are going on between. And so, I mean, famously during the 1956 Olympics, Hungary and the Soviet Union. So this was right at the time of the Soviet invasion of Hungary. So Hungary and Soviet Union had a water polo match. I think it was a semi-final of the water polo competition in Melbourne, and from all the descriptions subsequently, the swimming pool afterwards was covered in blood. I mean, this was a very, very nasty um, confrontation between the Hungarians and the Soviets in this water polo semi-final. As I say, that's the story, that the swimming pool afterwards was covered in blood. So I mean, I'm sure there are other examples when these have happened, but I think that's a kind of a very famous one. Anyway, thank you, Vic, and then uh, Robert says, speaking of Don Quixote, Miguel de Cervantes fought against the Ottomans in the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, a naval clash in the Gulf of Patras of western Greece, which finally got the Turks out of Europe. Yeah, that's a good point. um, um, so anyway, yeah, dark, was typing in the dark. Okay, all right. I think my time is up. So thank you very much, everybody who joined me. Thank you for all of your comments and questions and suggestions, so such as suggestions for films and so on. Really appreciate that. And thank you above all to those who contributed to the tip jar. As always happens, in a few hours, I'm going to have to deal with the dogs, and I can say, yeah, we're not very interested in your travails at Heathrow. We're more interested in what you're doing for the tip jar, and then I have to explain myself, and it's never a pretty sight. But anyway, thank you for everyone who contributed to the tip jar. It helps us do what we do here, and we'll be back on Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And until then, all the best. Good night.